Welcome back, my horror family, to another episode of Whispers in the Dark. I'm your host, Eddy, and tonight I have a tale that might make you question the things you've seen and felt when you knew you were practicing things you shouldn't. In the world of the supernatural, demons are among the most feared entities. Much like sharks are drawn to the scent of blood, demons are naturally attracted to pain and suffering. They feed off the darkness that we cast upon one another. Our story tonight takes us into the world of organized crime, where violence and cruelty run rampant. But as one mobster is about to learn, the consequences of his actions go far beyond what he can see in the physical world. So gather your courage, dim the lights, and join me as we delve into the twisted tale of I Know Why Mobsters Go to Church on Sunday. Tommy was a seasoned mob enforcer, and no stranger to the darker corners of life. His line of work often brought him to the seediest parts of town, where he would collect debts from the desperate and downtrodden. It was just another day on the job when he was told to go to the Upper East Side to collect from a man named Frankie, who had fallen behind on his payments. Frankie's building was a crumbling shell of a building. The once proud brick face had definitely seen better days. Its surface covered with grime and graffiti. Tommy could tell in a classy place like this, the elevator would definitely be out of order. Arriving at Frankie's dingy apartment, Tommy found the place in even worse shape than he imagined. Considering how low the bar was set by the outside of the building, that was really saying something. The walls were cracked, and a stench of stale cigarettes and mold filled the air. Tommy knocked on the door, and Frankie, a disheveled man with fear in his eyes, reluctantly let him in. Frankie could hardly look at Tommy. His voice was trembling as he began to speak. "Tommy, please, you gotta understand. I've been out of work for months now. I've been trying. I really have. I've been looking for a job every day. Look at this place. You think I want to live like this? I can barely afford to keep the lights on." Tears welled up in his eyes as he continued. "My wife left me last month, took the kids, moved in with a mom. She said she couldn't stand living in this dump, and I don't blame her." Tommy interrupted Frankie. "Frankie, you probably watched Rocky and have this idea that guys like me have a good heart. But love don't pay the bills, Frankie. And because you live in this rat hole building, I had to walk up 8 flights. Do you know how hard that is to do?" "Well, yeah, I live here." "Hey, don't interrupt. You see, if I don't do my job right now, the boss will just send me back, maybe with someone else, to make sure it gets done. Then I would have walked up these steps again, and made a friend of mine walk up those steps. Okay. How much so we don't have to do this?" "The boss wants all of it." "All of it?" "All of it. Maybe with half, and a very special promise you'll pay on time next week. We could say your account is up to date." Done. I'll go get it now." All at once, as if driven by a sudden burst of adrenaline, Frankie tried to run past Tommy and into the hallway. But Tommy was too quick and caught Frankie, dragging him back into the apartment. Tommy's fist came down like a hammer on Frankie's face, showing no mercy. Frankie continued to struggle, refusing to give in without a fight. But with each blow, his struggles weakened. While hitting Frankie, Tommy happened to glance over at a dusty mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. In his reflection, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A demonic figure with black, soulless eyes and jagged horns hovered behind him. But that wasn't all. The creature was smiling. Its hideous grin seemed excited by Tommy's violent actions, almost as if it was feeding off the fear and pain in the room. In an instant, Tommy released his grip on Frankie, who collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. Fear and confusion gripped Tommy as he backed away from the battered man and the mirror that still showed the demon celebrating Tommy's every move. Without uttering another word, Tommy bolted from Frankie's apartment. His heart pounded in his chest. He raced down the stairs, his mind a whirlwind of terror and uncertainty. In his haste, Tommy tripped and fell down the stairs, landing hard on the cold, filthy floor. Wincing in pain, he picked himself up and continued to flee the building as fast as his legs could carry him. Back at his own apartment, Tommy found himself unable to escape the haunting image of the demon, He compulsively checked every mirror, terrified to find the sinister creature lurking behind him. Despite the absence of the demon in the reflections, a deep sense of dread continued to gnaw at him, making it impossible to shake his newfound fear. Word quickly spread among Tommy's associates about his bruised and battered appearance. Many assumed he'd lost a fight to Frankie. They obviously hadn't seen Frankie, who was simultaneously tending to his own injuries. While it didn't make sense, they just assumed he somehow bested Tommy. Tommy's frustration and fear boiled over, and he lashed out at the people he would normally call his friends. His anger, fueled by the secret he couldn't bring himself to share. As Tommy struggled to make sense of what happened, he realized that he needed to confide in someone who might understand, or at least believe his story. He decided to go to the local church and speak with the priest. Even if the priest thought he was crazy, it wouldn't matter if it was anonymous. As Tommy approached the entrance of the church, he could already sense a change within himself. The familiar sound of the heavy wooden doors creaking open seemed to welcome him, inviting him into the sanctuary. Crossing the threshold, he was drawn to the soft light that filtered through the stained glass windows. The faint scent of incense wafted through the air, soothing his frayed nerves. The quiet stillness of the church offered a stark contrast to the chaos and violence of his everyday life. Tommy took a moment to stand there. The weight of his trouble seemed to lift ever so slightly from his shoulders. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he found himself able to take a deep, calming breath. Tommy hesitated for a moment before stepping into the confessional booth. He began to recount his terrifying experience to the priest, trying to convey the horror and confusion he felt. Then the priest asked Tommy what he was doing when he saw the demon. It was important to rule out things like drugs and alcohol before immediately jumping to the supernatural. I was visiting a guy to help him move some furniture. We started joking around, trying to lift a heavy couch. I lost my grip and my fist and accidentally, repeatedly hit this guy in the face. And that's when I glanced at the mirror and saw that thing. The priest listened intently to Tommy's story. He nodded solemnly before offering his advice. My son, we all have our crosses to bear, and sometimes we find ourselves in difficult situations. The important thing is you've come here seeking guidance. You must face the darkness and seek the light to dispel it. Pray for strength and guidance, and trust that God can help even those who feel lost in their line of work. Tommy shook his head unconvinced. Father, you don't understand. My job, it's not something you can just walk away from. It's not something God would approve of either. The priest remained firm. God's love is limitless, Tommy. No one is beyond redemption. But if you're sure about what you saw, remember, demons have their own preferences. If you want to keep them at bay, consider doing things they wouldn't like. Acts of kindness, charity, helping others, and attending Mass are all ways to counteract their influences. Tommy sat there quietly for a moment, thinking about how happy the monster in the mirror looked. He couldn't deny the demon looked like he enjoyed what Tommy was up to. After some resistance, Tommy reluctantly agreed to give it a try. I'll come to Mass on Sunday. Maybe it'll help. Sunday arrived, and Tommy found himself getting ready to go to Mass. He considered what the father had told him. It felt right. If he would do some good here and there, any demon that might be following him wouldn't like it, and maybe leave. Tommy arrived at the church, found a pew in the back, and quietly sat down. He looked around and found himself surrounded by the familiar faces of older members of the family. They sat in silence, avoiding eye contact and any kind of acknowledgement. As the sermon progressed, Tommy couldn't help but feel curious about whether the demon had followed him into the church. He discreetly took out his phone and used the selfie camera to check his reflection, hoping to catch a glimpse of the demonic presence, if it was there. To his surprise, the other mobsters in attendance seemed to take notice of Tommy's actions. These men wouldn't look at Tommy with even one eye before, now carefully watched him as he examined his reflection. Within a few moments, one by one, they too began taking out their phones, using their screens as makeshift mirrors to check their own reflections. It was as if they all shared a silent understanding, a collective fear of the unseen forces that haunted them. As the sermon came to an end, the congregation rose to leave. Tommy couldn't help but feel a sense of camaraderie with the older family members. It wasn't something he would ever talk to them about. He would probably never utter the words, "See you at Mass," but they were all bound by the darkness of their past. Perhaps there was still hope for redemption, or finding solace in the light of faith. And maybe, just maybe, attending Mass on Sundays would become a tradition, a small step towards a better path for each of them. Well, horror fam, our tale of darkness and redemption has come to an end. I hope you enjoyed tonight's scary story as much as I did. But before I leave you, I've got a little something to share. Have you considered joining Patreon? When you join Patreon, you become part of the family. And as you know, family takes care of family. So go to Patreon and make sure you're part of the exclusive circle of trust. My goodness, it's just $1. Don't be cheap. Remember, my friends, you are special. The hardships and bad experience you faced are evidence of that. If you weren't special, the darkness wouldn't bother trying to bring you down. So focus on the positive, and you'll find that there are so many good things waiting for you in this world. With that, I hope you all sleep tight, but remember, on this show, sweet dreams are not guaranteed. Good night.